James Middleton. James was thrust into the public spotlight, wasn't he, 15 years ago, when his big sister Catherine married Prince William at Westminster Abbey. On that day, he gave a reading in front of 1 billion people. How scary would that be? Since then, though, he's talked really passionately about mental health. You know, he struggled with his own since childhood. It's the subject of his book. Meet Ella, the dog who saved my life. And James joins me now alongside, well, they've all got something to do with Ella, haven't they, James? They're all related to Ella. They're daughters and granddaughters.
Yes, so in fact, the two here are Ella's daughters. And then Ella's granddaughter is with you, Nala.
Granddaughter, hiya. It's great. Now, tell me about Ella, because she was so important in your life and she really did save you. She really did.
Ella was, you know, I think I spent a lot of my life looking after her, and it was sort of towards the end, you know, I realised that actually she was the one who was looking after me, and I sort of made it a mission to make my dogs' lives as happy and healthy as they've made mine. And I think with writing the book, it was more of a sort of initially started off as a journey to remember everything there was about her, because I recognise how much she's brought me in my life today and shaped who I am now.
Well, exactly, and she did actually save you. I mean, genuinely saved you. You were, you know, we've all gone through terrible times in our lives, but you had chronic depression. We're talking really bad. And it got so much that you thought, I don't want to be here anymore. But then, it was a bit like Ricky Gervais in Afterlife. Do you remember? He said, no, I've got to look after this dog. Yeah. I've got to look after her. I can't leave her. No, and that's amazing.
Ella was my sort of reason for being. She was my reason to get up in the morning. She was my reason to get out and about and to do things. And, you know, intentionally or not intentionally, she would get in the way.
I know what you mean.
And that would just be a pause in, you know, a dangerous thought process that was going on, or in, you know, moments that I couldn't see any happiness or joy. She would come in with a walking boot in my mind, in her mouth, and that would just change my mindset and suddenly think, okay, we're going to go for a walk, or aspects like that. And that's where, you know, I think the power of dogs can be so fantastic.
Yeah, we don't deserve them, James. We don't deserve dogs. They are absolutely brilliant. And it was almost as if, you know, just before she died, she sort of felt, my work here is done. He's fine, you know. It was as if she kind of knew that you were going to be a dad, that things were going to be okay.
No,
it's amazing that.
There are elements in my life, and I look back at it now with the things that we went through my formative sort of, you know, early adulthood all the way through to just missing out on seeing me becoming a father. But she knew before my wife and I knew that my wife was pregnant. And she passed away just a week before we found out that she was pregnant. And if dogs can, you know, they can smell cancer, they can sense low blood sugar levels. There's so many incredible things dogs can do. So knowing that my wife was pregnant was sort of her knowing that now's my time to leave. He's going to be okay.
Do you know, it's really good you're sharing this with us, because people tend to think that, especially if somehow you're related to the royals in some way, that life is golden and everything's fine. And actually, there's a lot of things in your life that are absolutely brilliant. But in order to get here, you've had to go through a lot. You went to therapy, you did all of these things. And that was, you're very candid about that, about seeking help, making sure you get that.
I mean, at the start, you know, this is one of the main reasons for speaking out, was I didn't feel like I would be accepted for having depression. I didn't understand it myself. There was still a stigma in myself about what depression was. And I felt, you know, I recognise I've had a very privileged upbringing, been very fortunate about my schooling and huge support and love from my family. And, you know, on the outside, one would say, but what do you have to be depressed about? But actually, depression is significantly more than just a feeling. It is an absence of feelings. And I think, you know, it is classless, it's raceless, it's genderless. Depression can affect, you know, and it's still the largest killer of men under the age of 50. And so I think, you know, for me, I wanted to share my story in the hope that it might resonate with others.
No, very much so, and it really does. And it just so happens, you know, you say you've got a great family, really close. Your sisters went with you to therapy. I mean, that's brilliant, isn't it, that they were there? Because obviously, Catherine has done so much work with mental health charities anyway. She would have that sort of like deeper understanding in a way, I suppose, both of them, when they came with you.
Absolutely. I think, you know, at the start, actually, my family were the hardest people to speak to, because I think they know, in my circumstances in particular, they knew me many ways better than I knew myself. And so to open up to my family was a very challenging step. So I initially went into therapy, and at the right time, my family got involved, and I was very fortunate they did, because they did have to be patient. They had to sit on the sidelines and really watch and see me suffer, and it was very challenging for them to, because all they wanted to do was help.
Of course.
And then when the timing was right, and I think timing was so important, that they came in and they understood, and they were able to understand, you know, a lot more than I actually thought. And I recognise the work that both Catherine and William have done in mental health, and
it's
that
fantastic.
has helped me
absolutely
sort of move forward.
Yeah, of course it has, and it has raised awareness. And the thing I think about someone like yourself is, if it can happen to you, it can happen to absolutely anybody. And it's taken that terrible stigma out of mental health, where, oh, you know, pull yourself together, you know, that old attitude of, oh, behave yourself, you know, that's ridiculous. And I just think it's lovely. Yes, you've had that help, you've had therapy, but you also had Ella, you know, you had and your family, but you had her too. I think it's brilliant that Ella lives on in all of these beautiful, beautiful dogs. That must give you a lot of comfort.
It does, and I think one of the things I was most sad about when Ella was to leave us was that, you know, I know I never would forget about her, but it was just that she would become a memory. But actually, she lives on in everything I do and decisions that I make. I look, you know, I have a 1-year-old son, Inigo, and I see Ella through him, in the sense of the fact that she was who introduced me to my wife. And
she was. Now, this is an interesting one, because Ella played Cupid, really, didn't she? She kind of spotted your wife. She spotted her before you.
Very much so. No,
It's like 101 Dalmatians when they get together. I love it.
No, and I think these are, you know, things that I learn from dogs all the time, which is that you have to look at a moment and seize it there and then. You know,
she was like, you should go and talk to this woman.
Pretty
She's
much.
obviously meant for you. And then she goes over, and dogs are a great way. What an icebreaker they are. When you know, everybody just wants to.
You can go for a walk without a dog, and, you know, perhaps if you make eye contact with someone, it's sort of a bit of an odd thing to do. But with a dog, it's, you know, I know a lot of, when I lived in London, I knew most of the people in the park through the names of their dogs rather than their actual names.
No, you're absolutely right. That's the same with me. I know all the dogs' names. I absolutely don't know the people's names for sure. And there's some lovely stories in the book. There's one that's really lovely when your wife-to-be, and she met her future niece and nephew, who just so happened to be royal. And they were so funny, because we're just like other kids. They were just sort of saying, oh, yeah, and we're chatting to her and asking her loads and loads of questions. It's cute.
No, well, I think in any scenario, you know, I think we are a relaxed family, and I, you know, perhaps threw Elise a little bit in the deep end in that scenario. But I think I'm fortunate that we're such a, you know, a close-knit family, and it was a, you know, a moment that I think for her was more challenging or embarrassing than it was for me. So.
Exactly. When me Prince George is saying, so, you going out with my uncle? So it's great, because they're just your family who happen to be royal. That's the thing of it, isn't it? And you've been kind of thrust into the public eye a little bit. Making that speech at the wedding, James, for goodness sake, how you managed to do that, I don't know how you did.
I'm more nervous now than I think I was then, being here today. But
you're not nervous sitting there talking to me. Behave yourself. We're all just sitting here with the dogs. It's fantastic. I could sit here all day, to be fair. It's lovely. Well, look, great to see you. Thank you for doing this, because it's important. And anybody that loves dogs, anybody that's maybe a little bit worried about their mental health generally, or anybody that just likes a lovely story about a good family, Meet Ella is out today. And just give Catherine, your sister, just give her all of her love. That's all I would say to you. We're thinking of her. We're very, very fond of her, and we just hope she's doing fine.
Thank you.
It's great to see you.
Thank you very much for
Can you come back tomorrow with your doggies?
Yeah, absolutely.
I love them. Just leave them behind for me.